Hello, hello, and welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose. We are at the end of day 4 of the 5th test of the Ashes. It is all coming to a pointy end, and as my salient co-host, who I'll introduce in a moment, pointed out the other day, it is coming to a wonderful day to go and watch the cricket at the SCG and a very likely Australian win. Of course, that co-host is none other than Adam Clements. Good to have you back. Some wonderful foresight there, mate.
Yeah, mate. Yep. I had to be right on something for once. So I think my tip of the draw's out the window. So yeah, nice to get one thing right, maybe.
Yeah, it would be some result from here. I think there was points today where it looked like it was coming back into the picture as the English sort of made some good work of the match. But I guess let's talk about, obviously, the Aussies batted at the start of the day for a very brief window. It felt like blink and you miss it. Some early wickets for the Aussies starting. Steve Smith departed, then Stark and Boland went not long after. Bo Webster managed to chuck on another 30 or so and has done himself absolutely no harm. We'll get to his bowling a little bit later on. But you felt that England sort of got on top early this morning. 567 was probably leaving a few in the bank.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we lost 3 for 50 off, or 3 for 49 off 9 overs. So we didn't really soak up enough time to stop ourselves from having to bat again. But, like an extra few runs would have been good. I mean, but if we don't get those 50 runs this morning pretty quickly, England are almost sort of ahead in the game, like with a decent lead. So they were still important runs. Bo Webster left stranded one short of his best test score, but it's a not out. So I'd say I'd be pretty happy with that. And like I said, he'd done himself absolutely no dramas, like putting himself in the box seat for the next test.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's one of the things, right? And it'll boost his average as well nicely. So he's now got, I think, is it 4 or 5 test 50s already in 7 tests? So going really well. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be Cameron Green, especially after the spill catch, which we'll get to undoubtedly in a little bit. But there's some people, when we move to the English, the Aussies got there and they, set a reasonable total for England to, I guess, pursue at that point. It was, I'm trying to think, I'm doing my maths here, 190, 180 something that they needed to get the lead. So it was enough to put some pressure on them as the pitch started to deteriorate. And I tell you what, England deteriorated quickly. Zach Crawley doing what Zach Crawley does. Mitchell Stark doing what Mitchell Stark does. A wicket in the first over. He goes for 1. Mitchell Stark getting him trapped in front. Just, as I said, doing Mitchell Stark things. It's 28 or 29 times now in the first over of a spell or an innings that he's gone and got it done.
Yeah, mate, his record speaks for itself. I think that means he's on 29 wickets for the series now as well, which is a nice little coincidence. But yeah, Crawley, it was probably a pretty good bit of bowling because it's been so hard for him all summer. He's been blasted for playing at balls he shouldn't play at, and then he doesn't play at one that he should play at, and he gets caught in front. So very good bit of bowling. Probably a bit unlucky for Crawley, but that's just the class of Stark sort of shining through.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think, as you said, 29 wickets at an average just over 20. You also got Scott Boland at 20 wickets. I think an average just under 25 after this innings as well. So some wonderful areas there. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of Alex Carey. He was on for breaking Brad Haddin's record of the most dismissals by a wicketkeeper in a series. But Steve Smith's been taking the catches and the bowlers have been getting them trapped in front. So... but look, the English did well from there to recover, and a lot of that was Bethel and Duckett paired together. Duckett that was then undone by Neser. Joe Root, look, I'm not sure what he was quite thinking, and there's a few other questionable dismissals as you get through it, but all in all, there was some moments for England where they felt like they were starting to get some momentum back. We had an 81-run partnership. We had a 102-run partnership between Bethel and Brook, and then all of a sudden they just again, back-to-back-ish wickets. I mean, the Duckett one was another 30 runs on, but Root just never looked like he got going.
Yeah, I thought Root sort of put England's cards on the table, and it sort of felt like England were playing for the draw. He got 6 off 37. Never really looked comfy, but I thought that it was sort of showing us that England weren't going to go for the win. Obviously, Bethel has kicked on and put them in a position where they could win it, with a miracle, but there was a few cheap ones. I mean, Will Jacks, that was an absolute head scratcher. Second ball out into the deep. Things like that are just crazy. I know we'll probably get into it a bit more as well, but I know Stokes is injured, but if you're the captain and your team's in that position, the shot that he played was pretty average.
Yeah, I think, and that's a point, right? I was looking at Ben Stokes' career before, and I think only once in his career has he done worse in a test where he's batted twice, and you have to go all the way back to July 2014 in only his second series, his first home series against India, where he did get a pair. I think, outside of that, the only other time he's really done anything of note like that was a year or so, a couple of years ago, where he got a 0 and a 2, but and that was in India, which is very different batting conditions. Like here in Australia, he gave his wicket away.
Yeah.
That said, it probably wasn't the worst of the wickets to fall, but as the captain, he needs to do a little bit better.
Yeah.
But Will Jacks, you say that the English plan seemed to be revealed by Joe Root. It felt like the English plan had been flipped on its head when Will Jacks came out and decided, I'm just going to try and play some T20 cricket from the get-go here. It was like he thought they needed to, peel off 100 in the last session to win the game. He doesn't know there's a day 5, right?
It was ridiculous. It was such a bad shot. And just while we're talking about that dismissal, I do want to give a bit of credit to Cam Green. I mean, he took a great catch in the outfield. It's probably a credit to him and Jake Weatherald, who affected a nice run out. But they're still in the game. It's been a long series for both of them. They both, have sort of left a lot on the table, sort of under pressure to keep their spots. But even on the second last day of the series, they're finding ways to stay in the game and help the team win. So, and everyone was still just excited for them. Like, it's not like they're on the outer within the team as well. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it was really good. Even Marnus, right, who would probably rub on a lot of people's nerves after they'd spent 6 weeks with him. He was there. He was heavily involved as well in terms of that run out. But it was great work from Weatherald. I'm still not sure. Like, that's one of those cardinal sins. Any of those balls just behind square, either side of the wicket, you've got to be certain of. But yeah, some weird dismissals there. Smith looked like he was just starting to get set and get going. Again, we had some junk time bowling. No disrespect to Webster, Head, and Labuschagne, but a lot of what they were bowling was, Travis Head went at a better than a run a ball. So they should have just been capitalising there, trying to continue to chip this lead ahead. If Jamie Smith and Jacob Bethel go to stumps overnight, this is a very different complexion because they're probably leading by a little bit more than what they are at 119. They're probably leading by 135, 140, which then means if they can put on, 40 or 50, and then you get Braden Carse and Matthew Potts chip in with a 10 each, and whoever's batting with them can continue to get those sorts of runs too. It is getting to that 250, which, again, I don't think is going to be an unachievable total. But if you've got 250 in less than 2 sessions tomorrow, it's starting to get. Australia's got to get going on a pitch that's probably not going to be super easy to bat on. It's going to start to break up a little bit more. So, yeah, you've got to question some of the thinking or lack thereof of the English at different points. And as you say, like, it doesn't really seem like they knew what was going on. I'll tell you what, if Brendan McCullum did send Will Jacks out there with a counter-attack message, then that should be the nail in his coffin.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That was, like I said, we can talk about Will Jacks' dismissal all afternoon, but it was pretty poor, and it really showed their game plans all over the shop, especially after Root had sort of scratched around for so long. But if we want to talk about positives for England, Jacob Bethel is going to be a problem. He's 22, so he could play the next series 26, 30, 34. He could play 5. If he goes to 38, he could play 5 Ashes series in Australia, and to start it with his first ever Test 100 at one of the most iconic grounds in cricket, in front of a huge crowd, it was pretty incredible. He probably looked the most assured of any English batsman in this whole series.
He batted like a Test match batsman, and again, he wasn't slow about it. Strike rate of just over 60.
Yep.
But I think until this afternoon, where he had a bit of a play and miss late in the day, we didn't really see many false strokes from him.
Yep.
He's got a little bit of swagger without being too much, and again, I'm putting that down to his Barbados heritage.
Yep.
He's got a little bit of the bling. He obviously, he's the new generation. I think someone that I was talking to the other day we're talking about the AFL and compared him to Jack Ginnivan. He's got a little bit of swagger. If he can learn to channel that and go the right way, it's chatting to one of our good mates, CT, today, and it's he's got a little bit of KP about him.
Yeah.
And then he's got a few elements of almost Marnus's detail about him and the energy without being over the top. So it's kind of like an interesting balance there. So, and he does a bit of everything, right? Like, he's good in the field. He bowls. Again, his bowling's not going to, take thousands of wickets or hundreds of wickets, but it's going to be a good contributor. He's essentially going to step in. The bad news for Aussies is he going to step into that role that Joe Root will vacate before the next Australian series, and he'll probably be their number 3 or number 4, as you say, for the next possibly 10 to 15 years, depending on how long he wants to play. The big question mark they have on him is, he doesn't play a lot of first-class cricket because he gets called into a lot of the white ball stuff, and he'll be playing, around the world there. And that's the modern game. At the end of the day, it's like, a lot of our good Aussies aren't playing a lot of Sheffield Shield. That's just what happens. So, look, I'm a little bit excited by what he showed us today. Hopefully that can become consistent. I'm also a little bit concerned, though. So, hey, nothing wrong with a bit of Barbados swagger on a white man with a blonde mullet.
That is exactly right. I mean, yesterday, when he was bowling, the blonde locks, left arm orthodox, reminded me a little bit of Michael Clarke, but certainly with the batting hand, he shows just as much class. And the one thing that really impressed me was when he got in the 90s, Scott Boland was bowling and locked him down. I think he was on 99 for 7 balls, and against Stark as well, he faced a bit from him, and he showed so much restraint. He could have easily lashed out at one of them, top edge at the keeper, or slashed it out someone out in the deep. But to have that sort of maturity, and even when he got to 100, his celebration was pretty subdued for someone that just hit their first Test 100, because he knew that he still had a job to do, which was very impressive from a man as young as he is.
Not just his first Test 100, his first class 100.
Class 100, that's right, incredible.
Quite interesting. Again, we've seen that happen. We took a shot on Marnus, obviously, when he didn't have a lot on the board, and there's obviously something they see in him, but he's showing that there is a different style to Bazball to be played, and I think he's going to be a key cog. I just, and I've got no axe to grind with Brendan McCullum, but I just think that it's time for a change in English cricket, and I don't doubt that Brendan will go and do a wonderful job, whether it's franchise cricket or something else somewhere else. He's obviously an ornament to the game in New Zealand, but it's time for a bit of a change, and I think Jacob Bethel is one of the key pieces they're going to build that around. We might be looking at some different pieces as well and what they can get, because you start looking at some of these guys that are playing in this series and the numbers they've put up, and we talked about it just before off air. If Jacob Bethel manages to get another 18 runs, he will be the 4th highest run scorer for England in this Ashes series, and he's played 2 tests. I don't think he's going to quite catch Zach Crawley, but to put it in perspective, Zach Crawley's been their opener for all 5 tests, has 273 runs at an average of 27.3. Yep. So Jacob Bethel, let's just say he goes and gets another 20 runs. He'll go past Duckett and Smith, and will sit there just behind Zach Crawley. He'll be averaging, somewhere in the high 50s to 60s in 2 tests. And again, small sample size. So yes, he's probably had the best of the batting on this pitch. But again, Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett haven't really capitalised on this pitch, So there's only been, I think, if memory serves me, there's only been 2 other centuries scored by his country, and they both by their former captain in Joe Root. So he's stood up when the time counted. People can make excuses for the others, but yeah, he's done very well here. A high score of 142 not out, 193 runs already, and I wouldn't be surprised to see. I'd kind of like to see him put on those extra 20 in the morning, because it's not going to make a big difference to Australia, right? But it would just make a point there. If he starts going past Zach Crawley, we'll be in trouble. But imagine that if he goes, not only he's never scored a first-class 100 before, goes on and gets a first-class double ton in a test match for the first time.
It would be incredible if he did go on with it, and they're going to need him to do something like that if the other tailenders can hang on. But I will remind you that there was 400s hit by English players in this test. Bryden Cass and Matthew Potts both got absolutely belted with the ball. So, it's one of those things.
Yesterday, we talked about Matthew Potts. I have a bit of a soft spot, I feel, for Matthew Potts, because I feel like he's been thrown to the wolves here.
Yep.
They're clearly giving him a shit lot of instructions and just kept persevering. I mean, we did it with Cameron Green a few years ago, where that was his job. He'd come in, he'd bowl short. If it didn't work, we'd take him off after 5 overs. They're just like, no, just keep going. Travis Head's dispatching it all corners of the ground. That can't be good for a guy's confidence, right? Like, it's just, anyway. I think there's a lot of questions about the English plans or lack thereof plans. And, the redeeming thing for Potts is that he's not a pup. He's nearly 28. I think he's 27 and a bit. So, but again, like, it's not much of a welcome into the series. He's just been, just come in and they give him a game plan, and he's just getting absolutely belted up on. And I know he's injured now, but how Ben Stokes and Tongue weren't opening the bowling in this test is beyond me. Speaking of bowling, I do want to talk about Marnus in the high 130s today. What's going on? Where's he finding the extra pace from? He's nearly a genuine medium fast at this point.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, he comes in, he tries hard. That's sort of all he's got going for him, I guess. But I mean, it's pretty impressive now that you can have guys come in as sort of a fifth or sixth option with the ball and sort of generate that sort of pace. I mean, I don't think there's many sixth change bowlers around the world that can do that. So, he picked up that wicket in the first innings. This time he was a bit more in a bouncer plan, just sort of getting out there and just give it all you can give it for 3 or 4 overs. But, I guess if they're happy to let him go, they might as well because he's going to burn too much energy with his jaw otherwise.
Yeah, he's just annoying everyone. Like, it's like a kid that just, you just give them a task that's pointless to do just so that they can go and get through it. But, I'm just waiting for him to just, randomly roll out, bowl a couple of short balls and then come in off a long run and bowl a leg break just for shits and giggles because he's Marnus and that's the kind of dude that he is. But anyway, speaking of bowling, before we wrap up, we spoke about Beau Webster before. Ended up with 3 wickets. Did quite a job. For a guy who's barely bowled off spin in the last 3 or 4 years, it looked pretty decent. I think the first one that he got, that looked like it turned a reasonable amount. So, certainly, been impressed with what he's been delivering.
Yeah, Beau Webster, I mean, I've been calling for him to come into the side for most of the series. I guess we will never know how he would have gone, but he's come in, he's done his job with the ball, with the bat, and now with the ball as well. He picked up 3 pretty important wickets in the grand scheme of things. I can't fault him. I mean, like I said to you yesterday, it ended up being a conversation about whether they pick Murphy or Green. So Webster's definitely justified his selection, and he'll definitely be in the squad for the next test, which is a long way away. And hopefully that'll stamp him for the next summer as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, speaking of that, you and I were talking earlier today. Stay tuned. We will have our best of the Ashes 11, each of our votes, as well as we'll get Brodie Burrows to chip in on that one. And then a few of the crew will have our way too early team to play Afghanistan. We'll do like a 14 or a 15-man squad, but we'll name our 11. There might be some interesting rogue picks in there. I think there might be a bit of variety, which will be good. So looking forward to that. But as you say, I think July or August, depending on the order, whether they play the white ball games or the test first. The test will be in Darwin, I understand. The white ball games potentially in Mackay and or Cairns. So great to see test cricket going back to Darwin because it's been such a long time. But look, day 5 comes at us. You talked about it. Get down there. I believe the number is about 10,800. They need to break the all-time record for attendance at an SCG test that dates back to nearly 80 years ago, 1946. So get down there. We need to get at least 20 to 30,000 down there because we're going to probably get, looking at a 119-run lead, if England bat a little bit into the session, we'll probably get at least the best part of 2 sessions in, maybe a little bit longer if there's a couple of wickets that fall. And look, you never know what happens. If England do put another 50 or 60 here, there might just be enough that it gets a little bit lively if we lose a couple of early wickets. The one thing I want to see is whatever happens, if there is a chance to get Usman not opening, but if there's a chance to get him, like if we're chasing 150 and we lose a wicket with 40 to go, you've got to send him in at number 3, surely.
I was thinking about that today. I just think that you can't tempt fate. I think cricket has a very nasty way of coming back to bite you when you try and do things like that. I think he'll be happy to just be there. If it gets down to where they need maybe 10, I could justify it, but 40 in a game like this, it can happen very quickly. I think the pitch will start to deteriorate. I'd love to see it. I like the romance of it, but as I said, I think he'll be happy just to kick off with a 4-1 Ashes victory.
Look, I'd love it if it was a situation where we're chasing close to 200. Travis has peeled off another century to get a double up. A couple of wickets have unfortunately fallen. We don't need too many runs, and let's say that it all ends in the right order. And unfortunately, Steve Smith and Marnus don't make a lot. Jake Weatherald, well, I think he's on the ropes already, depending on what happens in the rest of the Shield. There's a young guy called Campbell Kellaway that I think we'll keep an eye on. And then Uzi comes out, needs 10 to win, and Trav's already on 100, so he's just sitting there and he's just making sure that Uzi gets as much of the strike as he can so that he can get home. But again, as you say, it dices with danger, it dices with risk, it dices with him getting another low score and the heartbreak of 17 and 5 at the SCG to finish. But either way, a wonderful test career as we talked about in our preview. Hats off to Uzi. This one hasn't been his show, but it's certainly been the Travis Head show today, the Jacob Bethel show though, and as we said, absolutely a name to watch. And when he's not playing against Australia, I wish him all the best.
Yeah, that's right. Can't fault him today. I know we've got to wrap up, but I just want to like I feel for the English fans because they've been screaming for Ollie Pope to step aside after a couple of bad starts in the first two tests, and then they had to wait till the series was over before bringing in Jacob Bethel, and he's looked so comfortable. So, yeah, big future ahead for him. And as I said, I wish him all the best, but just not against us. But yeah, he's going to be a fixture in the English side for a long time, I think.
I just feel sad for the days when he tears apart the West Indies with the bat, and they're sitting there going, "What could have been? He could have been." You know, the Brendan Nash who was actually good. But anyway, a big thank you to you, Clem. It's been great. Look forward to catching up at some point tomorrow to close this all out. Hopefully, an Aussie win, as much as we both would like the draw for other reasons. Either way, the Ashes will be, presented. All of that will go down tomorrow. The Crystal Ashes will be handed over again. So get down to the SCG if you've got any way of getting there. Let's make sure we break that record. I think we should see, again, as I said, it's going to be 2+ sessions, so we should be seeing 20-odd thousand people. And I think in Adelaide they charge about $30 a ticket, so well worth it. You're not going to get much better value, so get in there. As always, thanks to you, Clem, and it's been great having you on board again for another Ashes test.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. Yep, definitely get down there if you can. I reckon they'll blow that out of the water. They'll beat their record, and it should be a good, decent couple of sessions of cricket. And get to farewell Usman as well. So if you can get down there, make sure you get down there. Thanks for having me.
100%. And if you haven't already, make sure if you're not going, get your virtual seat to support the Jane McGrath Foundation. Wonderful work there, continuing to do. The Pink Test is an iconic piece of our history and obviously what we're having in our cricketing world as well. But a big thank you to you for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe, jump into the comments. Get in there and let us know who you think should be new inclusions when we look ahead to that Afghanistan series as well. We might need some pointers for those teams that we're going to drop. But until then, a big thank you to you for tuning into your home of the black and white of sports. No grey opinions here on the Chris McPherson Show.